Welcome to another edition of Tutorials on the Go. In this episode, we are going to discuss international organizations. In our tutorials on global legal systems, we mention the situation of conflict of laws, where outcomes of laws in one state might differ from that of another, which renders commercial international trade very challenging. And that also leads to the emergence of international organizations that seek to bridge that gap or smoothing that relationship. So in this discussion, we're going to look at these organizations and what they do. The first we're going to look at is the United Nations. They are a global body which has every country registered as a member. So their functions include maintaining peace, orderliness, and security across all its member nations. And they are also supposed to develop friendly interrelationship between nations that is supposed to foster commercial transactions. They also seek to assist in the resolution of economic, social, and humanitarian issues. So where there is a disaster in a country or a state, it is their mandate to go in and assist the government of that nation in resolving that menace. They also promote the respect for human rights and international freedoms. So where a citizen of one nation finds him or herself in another, in as much as they are out of their registered jurisdiction, they will not be harassed or their rights will not be trampled upon. Now, there are various organizations under the United Nations that handle various aspects of global trade. The first we're going to look at is the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law. This organization was founded in 1966 by the General Assembly of the United Nations. Now, it comprises of 60 member states, and these states are elected by a General Council. Their function is to seek to harmonize and unify international laws globally, especially the ones that relate to trade, such that the definition of one law on trade does not differ from another in a separate jurisdiction, so that trading is easily facilitated. They also issue model laws and convention that relates to international trade. So when we talk about model laws, we are looking at laws that are not legally binding, but then it will serve as a guide for member states in enacting trade laws, such that it does not conflict with another country's law. Conventions are agreements or treaties that two or more states sign to with regards to trade, such that whenever citizens of both countries are trading, they might refer to that agreement and there's no confusion. The next organization we're going to look at is the International Chamber of Commerce, the ICC. The ICC is an organization that is created by business leaders from across the globe. Now, ICC is made up of thousands of member companies and associations spanning 130 countries. Now, their aim is to serve world business by promoting trade and investment, open markets for goods and services, whereby there's not going to be any pressure on the determination of a goods. Pricing of goods and services are left to market forces. Also to ensure free flow of capital, where money from one jurisdiction can be allowed to be invested in another, or a citizen of one country can source resources from another in order to augment their trade. Another aim is to cooperate and advise the UN in formulating international laws and provide practical services to businesses that seek to combat commercial crime such as money laundering. Now, the ICC has a World Council, national committees and groups, and an international secretariat. So let's look at the World Council under the ICC. So the World Council is the utmost authority of the ICC. Now, it consists of delegates made up of business executives coming from states that subscribe to the ICC. And normally they are nominated by their national committees. So we'll look at national committee very soon. Its membership spans between 15 and 30. And they have a term of 3 years to serve. How that term spans is that every year, 1/3 of the council will retire. So by the 3rd year, all the members of the council would have phased out for another to be brought aboard. They elect the executive board of the ICC, which is responsible for implementing the policies that has been established by the chamber. Now, the council is also responsible for the election of the chairman and the vice chairman of the board, who is basically supposed to make recommendations for the board to implement or execute. The National Committee represents the International Chamber of Commerce in the respective member nations. They are the ones that elect the members to the World Council, and they also account for every activity of the ICC in its member states, and they also assist in the determination of policy. The Secretariat works closely with the national committees in the execution of the ICC's work program. So it's normally headed by a general secretary who will administer the affairs of the Secretariat. The next is the World Trade Organization. Now, this is the only global international organization that is responsible for dealing with the rules of trade between states. Now, at the heart of the WTO are agreements which are negotiated and signed by the bulk of the world's trading nations, and it is ratified in their parliament. The goal is to ensure that trade flows as smoothly, predictable, and free as possible. The WTO was formed in 1995 from the old General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which is the GATT, which existed since 1948. Now, the GATT was a legal agreement between many countries whose overall purpose was to promote international trade by eliminating or alleviating trade barriers such as tariffs and quotas. The WTO provides guidance on trade in goods, services, inventions, creations, and intellectual properties. The WTO has 149 members, which is basically 97% of the world's trade. So it's a very enormous organization. The purposes of the WTO are to assist the free flow of trade by removing obstacles, make known the rules that surround world trade for everybody to be abreast of, and eradicate confusion. And it also provides assurance to individuals, companies, and governments, the confidence to trade internationally. Now, this will stem from the assurance that the policies are not going to change radically. The functions of the WTO is to administer trade agreements wherever two nations are in need of the establishment of an agreement. They will step in and make sure that is done. They also serve as the liaison or the middle ground for negotiations between two states or two nations. Whenever there is a disagreement or dispute between member nations, they are the go-to for resolution, or at least they will step in to assist. And they will review national policies to ensure it is going to facilitate international trade, not to create bottlenecks. They also assist developing nations to enact policies that will position their countries to benefit for international trade. They also cooperate with other international organizations to smoothen the free flow of trade. Agreements in World Trade Organizations include individual countries committing to lower custom tariffs and the eradication of other trade barriers, again, to ensure the free or smooth flow of trade. It's also supposed to set procedures for settling disputes through the dispute settlement body. Now, they also prescribe special treatment for developing nations. They need special attention in order to step up and be at par with those that set up sometime earlier. And they require governments to make their trade policies transparent by frequently reporting to the WTO and availing themselves for periodic scrutiny. Decisions by the WTO are normally either reached by consensus, where a majority is required, or it can be by the entire membership of the organization. The next will be the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, that is the OECD. The OECD is a group of member countries whose modern aim is to form a forum to discuss, develop, refine economic and social policies. It was historically set up to be an organization that will administer the US and Canada to assist Europe after the World War II. The membership of the OECD is 38 countries from most continents. Apart from this, it has relationships with other 70 countries. They are not members, but they have some sort of agreement with the OECD. Now we create legally binding agreements and also non-binding guidelines for countries, that is the member countries, to subscribe to. It also provides guidance on certain areas, especially corporate governance, which is basically to aid companies to manage themselves properly to the satisfaction of the members and the directors. That's why we have the OECD Principles of Corporate Governance. The next one is the International Institute for the Unification of Private Law, UNIDROIT. They study needs and methods of harmonizing private and commercial laws between states or group of states with the purpose of formulating uniform law instruments, principles, and rules to achieve their set objectives. They have a membership of 61 states from 5 continents. The source of finance come from the member states. Their function is to draw up international conventions, which are agreements or treaties, which are designed to have the force of law in priority or proximity to the existing domestic law where it's adopted, so that the international law does not differ substantially from the domestic law, because it is the utmost responsibility or the right of nations to enact laws. So the international ones is optional for nations to take. Now, they're also supposed to draw up general principles addressed to judges or arbitrators. Now, judges are free to decide whether they will abide by these principles or do otherwise. The UNIDROIT has a 3-tier structure, which is the Secretariat, the Governing Council, and the General Assembly. So the Secretariat is responsible for the routine operations, that is the programs that is run by the UNIDROIT, and they are also headed by a General Secretary. When we come to the Governing Council, their mandate is to supervise the Secretariat. Now, they are made up of the President, who is an ex-officio member, meaning he is automatically selected by virtue of a position he occupies, and 25 other elected officials. So they can be judges, practitioners, and civil servants. The third is the General Assembly. Now, these are the decision-making body of the Unidroit. They elect the governing council with a term of 5 years. They also approve whatever program that Unidroit is supposed to execute. And then their composition is such that every member is supposed to nominate an official to serve